This is apropos. Well, first tonight to Lebanon, where Israel has carried out at least 10 separate airstrikes on Beirut's southern suburbs, destroying 6 buildings, including a residential complex and an office used by a pro-Iranian broadcaster. Earlier on Wednesday, Israeli strikes pounded an ancient coastal city which boasts a UNESCO World Heritage Site, leaving swathes of its centre in ruins. Our senior reporter, Catherine Norris-Trent, sent this report from southern Lebanon.
The centre of Nabatea in southern Lebanon lies in ruins, devastated by Israeli airstrikes. Hussein and his civil defence team are helping the few residents who remain.
هلا اليوم بدي ما جيبوا شيء بس اليوم رح نروح نجيب خبز وجايين. بدك خبز؟
لا خبز والله جبت من عند بنت كمان.
I thought there were people distributing food. We used to get help from the council. God will help us. I came to fetch my son and bring him to Beirut, but even there it's difficult. Everything is targeted now.
This is what's left of Nabatea's marketplace. 40 shops turned to rubble in Israeli airstrikes the previous Saturday.
Look, it was a market. Everyone knows this place. Everyone knows what was here. There were just shops, nothing else.
The interview's cut short when a warplane flies overhead, bombing a building not far away. The city's mayor among more than a dozen people killed, local authorities say during a meeting to coordinate humanitarian aid.
You can see this is food. There's hummus, oil, pasta, cans of tuna, all the things people need. I'm not afraid for myself. I've left my wife and child behind so I can help the people stranded here.
Look, this is medicine. Are these weapons or missiles?
Israel said it struck Hezbollah targets.
This place has already been bombed. Could it be targeted again? Yes. You have to be ready for anything because they're bombing the whole town. Nothing is safe. Nothing is protected. As you can hear now, as always, the Israeli Air Force and drones are flying over Nabatea. The situation here is critical.
It's too dangerous to linger. Hussein and his team leave to head to another bomb site. Later that day, they were injured during a rescue mission.
There's been an exodus from the town of Nabatea. Over the past 2 weeks, there's been pretty much daily bombing. In the time we were filming here, there were 6 strikes.
Catherine Norris-Trent reporting. Well, for more on the situation in Lebanon, we're joined now by Beirut-based journalist Salah Hijazi, Deputy Chief at the Political Desk at L'Orient-Le Jour. Thank you so much for being with us on the programme this evening. Further attacks tonight, particularly on southern suburbs of Beirut. We're hearing that at least 6 buildings have been levelled there. What is the latest?
What we know so far is that 2 strikes were performed without prior notice, which might mean that it could be an assassination attempt. The following strikes were performed after evacuation orders were published on Twitter, as it's been happening now for 3 weeks. We don't know. We know that one of the strikes has killed 1 man and injured 5, including one child. But that's all we know. We still don't have information about who could have been the targets of these attacks.
And we're watching smoke rise as you speak to us over Beirut. Also today, we saw another front opened in Lebanon. Israel firing on Tyre, sparking a fresh exodus from what was once a vibrant coastal city. What is the latest there? Has the city been entirely evacuated at this stage?
Evacuation orders were published for a good half of the city, a very densely populated part of the city, close to historic monuments that are UNESCO World Heritage Sites. And it has sparked a new wave of exodus towards Saida and Beirut. Tyre is one of the biggest cities in the country. It's also well known because it's a stronghold of Nabih Berri, the president of parliament. It's the first time that it's targeted that way since the beginning of the war. It has been targeted before, but not in a massive way, and no evacuation orders were published before to its residents. So it does feel like it could be a message to the Speaker of Parliament. That's the idea that's circulating here in Beirut.
And when you say message to Parliament, what do you mean by that? If you could just elaborate a little bit on that.
The Speaker of Parliament, Nabih Berri, is the main negotiator in the name of Hezbollah. And recently, 2 days ago, he had a meeting with the American mediator, Amos Hochstein. He refused the Israeli conditions for a ceasefire, which reportedly included a large margin to be able to perform operations in the south in case Israel suspects a renewed Hezbollah presence there. He refused these conditions, and lots of analysts here in Beirut are saying that the attacks on Amal strongholds of the party of Nabih Berri could be messages to pressure him into showing more flexibility in the negotiations.
And Hezbollah has said tonight that it's hit a military factory in a suburb of Tel Aviv. The cleric also, who was expected to take over as chief of the group, confirming also that he has been killed in an Israeli strike several weeks ago. What kind of an impact is that going to have on the group? How much of a blow is this to Hezbollah?
What we know so far is that after the death of Hassan Nasrallah, followed by the death of Hashim Safieddin, who was his designated successor, Hezbollah is now managed in a very direct way by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. It could be a temporary arrangement before Hezbollah is able to restructure itself, because it lost basically its entire senior leadership.
And how
including very influential figure.
Sorry for cutting across you, Salah, but how are people in Lebanon reacting to all of this? How much anger is there against Hezbollah for what we're seeing happening in Beirut and elsewhere?
I think there are two dynamics that are kind of opposed. You have one dynamic, and a lot of people, even among Hezbollah's popular base, saying Hezbollah should not have participated in the war in Gaza. It should not have launched attacks on Israel, and it had led us to a war whose goal is to defend Iran and its interests, and not the interests of Lebanon. So that's one dynamic, but there's also another dynamic that also exists among people who are not necessarily pro-Hezbollah. Many moderates or many people who even oppose Hezbollah are very angry at the civilian death toll that is very high and the massive destruction they are seeing, and therefore they look at Hezbollah as the only group that can defend Lebanon from Israel. So you have these two competing dynamics, and we don't know which of these is stronger.
And
I guess we'll only know at the end of the war.
And sorry again, Salah, Israel is intensifying its campaign both in northern Gaza and in Lebanon. All of this coming as the US Secretary of State has just been in Israel. Is he succeeding, do you believe, in putting any pressure on Binyamin Netanyahu? How is all of this being viewed in Beirut?
In Beirut, the main idea is that Binyamin Netanyahu is not interested in any kind of deal and is basically uncontrollable. Despite, for example, a few days ago, the Secretary of Defense, the U.S. Secretary of Defense, said that the U.S. is observing Israel, and that they expect the Israelis to show some restraint around Beirut. The Prime Minister of Lebanon also said the same night that he received guarantees from the US that the Israelis will stop bombing the surroundings of the capital, or maybe at least just do it less frequently. And basically the same night after these two statements, Israel restarted bombing Beirut, and it hit massively around the capital. So yeah, the main idea people have here is that the Israelis are not interested in a deal, and really no one can stop them.
And how serious is the humanitarian situation at this point? We saw in the report that we played just before coming to you, people desperately searching for bread. More than 1 million people have been displaced. What is the situation currently for them?
It's extremely difficult. Lebanon was hit by an economic crisis years before the beginning of the war, and it was already struggling before the war has started. The escalation happened in a way that was more or less unexpected, and so hospitals were not necessarily prepared, shelters were not prepared. Now you have many people on the streets. You have, I'd say, the most fortunate among the displaced people are now sheltered in schools, and with really basic services being provided, food being provided in the form of aids from organizations and NGOs, and that's the most, the luckiest among the displaced. Many people are sleeping on the streets, on the corniche. So yeah, it's a very difficult situation. It's also creating a lot of pressure on access to services in safer areas like the capital or Saida, for example, where you have an enormous influx of people. Which creates a lot of pressure on, for example, food, rent, even waste management.
Salah, thank you so much for that. We'll have to leave it there, I'm afraid. That is Salah Hijazi, Deputy Chief at the Political Desk of L'Orient-Le Jour. Thank you so much for that. Well, that's it from us for now.